Ladies, last Tuesday my 9-year-old daughter walked into our Charleston kitchen, threw a legal document on the counter, and said 5 words that destroyed my world. "You're not my real mom." By the end of this story, you'll witness the moment I discovered the elaborate lies my ex-husband had been feeding our daughter for months. You'll see the courtroom confrontation where the truth finally came out. You'll hear the conversation that either saved or destroyed my relationship with the child I'd raised alone for 19 years. And you'll understand how some people will destroy innocent lives just to get their hands on money they never earned. The legal bombshell. The letter Amanda slammed down was from Hartwell & Associates, one of Charleston's most expensive law firms. It claimed that I had unlawfully retained custody of Amanda through fraudulent adoption proceedings, and that her biological father was seeking immediate restoration of parental rights. But here's what made my blood run cold. According to this letter, I wasn't just hiding Amanda's real father from her. I had supposedly stolen her as a baby and convinced everyone she was mine. How could 19 years of motherhood be called theft? The daughter I thought I knew. Amanda stood there in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd bandaged her scraped knees, helped her with homework, and celebrated every birthday for 19 years, looking at me like I was a complete stranger. Her eyes were cold, suspicious, filled with a rage I'd never seen before. "He told me everything, Mom. About how you took me from him when I was 2, about how you lied to the courts, about how my real name isn't even Amanda Mitchell. But who was he? And how had my own daughter become convinced that her entire life was a lie?" The father who vanished. Marcus Torres had walked out on us when Amanda was barely 2 years old. For 17 years, he'd paid minimal child support and shown zero interest in his daughter's life. No birthday calls, no Christmas visits, no graduation attendance. Amanda used to cry, asking why her daddy didn't love her enough to see her. I'd spent years helping her heal from that abandonment. So why was she suddenly calling him her real father and treating me like the villain? What had he told her that was so convincing she'd turned against me overnight? The stakes that changed everything. But the worst part wasn't just losing my daughter's love, it was the realization that someone had been systematically poisoning her mind against me. Someone had convinced my honor roll college student, my responsible, intelligent daughter, that 19 years of our life together was built on lies and kidnapping. Someone had made her believe that the mother who'd sacrificed everything for her was actually a criminal who'd stolen her childhood. The investigation that had to happen. Standing in my kitchen, holding a legal document that accused me of crimes I'd never committed, looking at my daughter's face filled with hatred for me, I knew I had 24 hours to prove that everything in that letter was a lie. Because if I couldn't, I was about to lose the only thing that had ever mattered to me, my relationship with my child. My name is Linda Mitchell, and I'm a 2-year-old registered nurse who spent the last 19 years believing I was living the American dream, raising a brilliant daughter as a single mother in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. For 2 decades, I've worked in the pediatric ward at Charleston Children's Hospital, caring for sick babies and supporting families through their worst crises. I've seen parents fight insurance companies, navigate complex medical systems, and make impossible decisions to protect their children. I've held countless mothers while they cried over their babies' diagnoses, and I've celebrated with families when their children recovered against all odds. I know what real maternal love looks like because I see it every day in my work, and I know what it means to sacrifice everything for your child because that's exactly what I did when Marcus left us. I worked double shifts to pay for Amanda's dance lessons, tutoring, and eventually her college tuition. I turned down dates, job opportunities in other cities, and chances for my own happiness because Amanda's stability came first. After my divorce 17 years ago, I rebuilt our life from nothing. Marcus had left us with massive debt, a mortgage I couldn't afford, and a 2-year-old daughter who cried every night asking where Daddy went. I moved us into a tiny apartment, worked nights and weekends, and slowly created a home where Amanda felt safe and loved. But now, At 19, when she's supposed to be becoming an independent adult, Amanda had been convinced that our entire relationship was based on lies. Someone had made her believe that I was a kidnapper who'd stolen her childhood, and that the father who'd abandoned her was actually her rescuer. I'm sharing this because I know there are other single mothers out there who've worked themselves to exhaustion trying to be enough for their children. We're the women who've been both mother and father, breadwinner and caregiver, cheerleader and disciplinarian. We've made it work through sheer determination and love. But I also know there are manipulative ex-partners out there who will use our children as weapons against us. They disappear when parenting gets hard, then reappear when it becomes convenient or profitable. They plant seeds of doubt about our love, our honesty, our worthiness as mothers. What happened in my Charleston kitchen that Tuesday morning wasn't just about a legal dispute, it was about a mother's worst nightmare. It was about watching the child you devoted your life to look at you with suspicion and hatred. It was about realizing that someone had been working behind the scenes to destroy the most precious relationship in your life. The letter Amanda showed me wasn't just threatening my custody, it was threatening to erase 19 years of bedtime stories, homework help, birthday parties, and unconditional love. Someone wanted my daughter to believe that none of it had been real, none of it had mattered, and none of it was worth protecting. What I read in that legal letter was so twisted, so manipulative, that I had to sit down before my legs gave out completely. The document from Hartwell and Associates wasn't just claiming Marcus wanted custody, it was accusing me of elaborate fraud. According to their investigation, I had allegedly conspired with corrupt social workers to falsify adoption records, bribe court officials to grant me custody, and systematically brainwash Amanda into believing I was her biological mother. The legal language was cold and clinical, describing 19 years of motherhood as unlawful detention and parental alienation. The Charleston morning sun was streaming through our kitchen windows, illuminating the same breakfast table where Amanda and I had shared thousands of meals together. I could smell her favorite coffee brewing the vanilla hazelnut blend she'd asked me to buy just last week. But everything felt different now, poisoned by the accusations in this letter. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers steady enough to read them. "Amanda," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "when did your father contact you?" Her answer made my heart stop. 3 months ago, he found me on Instagram and sent me a message explaining everything. 3 months. For 3 months, while I'd been working extra shifts to help pay for her college expenses, while I'd been proudly watching her excel in her nursing program, Marcus had been secretly filling her head with lies about our family. Amanda pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of messages that made me physically sick. Marcus had been methodical in his approach, first reaching out with concern for her welfare, then gradually introducing doubts about my honesty, finally presenting himself as her real father, who'd been kept away by my supposed lies and legal manipulations. He'd sent her photos of old court documents, carefully edited to remove context. He'd shared stories about their brief early relationship that painted him as a loving father who'd been stolen from, rather than a man who'd walked out voluntarily. Most manipulatively, he'd convinced her that I'd been receiving secret payments to keep them apart, money that should have been hers. The financial hook. But the part of his campaign that had clearly worked was his promise to pay for her remaining college expenses and graduate school, something I'd been struggling to afford on a nurse's salary. "He said you've been hiding money from me," Amanda said, her voice filled with resentment. "Money that was supposed to be for my education, but you've been keeping it for yourself." Marcus had provided Amanda with bank statements, investment documents, and insurance policies that supposedly proved I'd been lying about our financial situation. Everything was professionally formatted, legally convincing, and completely fabricated. But the worst revelation was still coming, because when I asked Amanda what Marcus wanted her to do about these supposed discoveries, her answer revealed the true scope of his manipulation. "He's filing for custody tomorrow. And he wants me to testify against you. If you've ever had someone try to turn your child against you, hit the like button, you'll understand what happened next. What Marcus had convinced Amanda to believe about her own birth and childhood was so elaborate, I realized he'd been planning this manipulation for months. Amanda sat across from me at our kitchen table and recited a version of her life story that was completely unrecognizable. According to Marcus's narrative, they'd been a happy family until I'd seduced him away from Amanda's real mother, a woman named Sophia who'd supposedly died in a car accident when Amanda was 18 months old. He'd painted himself as a grieving widower who'd been manipulated into a relationship with his deceased wife's best friend, me. I could hear our neighbor's lawnmower starting up outside, such a normal Tuesday morning sound that felt surreal against the backdrop of my daughter accusing me of destroying her family. Amanda's voice was steady and cold as she repeated Marcus's lies, but I could see her hands trembling slightly as she held his fabricated documents. The coffee I'd poured was growing cold between us, untouched, like everything warm and familiar about our relationship. He explained why he had to disappear. Amanda continued, her eyes never meeting mine. He said you threatened to take me away forever if he tried to fight for custody. He said you convinced the courts he was an unfit father because he was grieving Sophia too much to function properly. This was Marcus's masterstroke, reframing his abandonment as a noble sacrifice. He'd convinced Amanda that his 17 years of absence hadn't been neglect, but protective retreat, that his minimal child support payments hadn't been selfishness, but court-ordered restrictions on his involvement. The financial promises. But the hook that had clearly sealed Amanda's loyalty was Marcus's promise of financial security. He'd shown her bank statements proving he was now wealthy owner of a successful construction company in Atlanta and capable of providing everything I couldn't afford. Full college tuition, graduate school, a car, even a down payment on a house after graduation. Mom, he can give me opportunities you never could, Amanda said, and the accusation in her voice cut deeper than any legal document. He said you've been holding me back, keeping me dependent on you, because you're afraid of losing control. Marcus had been systematic in isolating Amanda from anyone who might contradict his narrative. He convinced her that my family was part of the conspiracy to keep them apart. He'd encouraged her to doubt my stories about our early years together. Most manipulatively, he'd made her feel guilty for loving me, suggesting that her affection was the result of Stockholm Syndrome rather than genuine maternal bonding. When is he filing for custody? I asked, my voice barely steady. Tomorrow morning, Amanda replied. And Mom Linda, he's not just asking for visitation. He's asking for full custody and requesting that you be required to repay all the child support he never should have had to pay. That's when Amanda dropped the most devastating bomb. And there's something else. He said there's a reason you've been so desperate to keep me. Something about Grandma's will that you've been hiding from me. The mention of my mother's will sent ice through my veins because suddenly Marcus's timing made perfect sense, and it had nothing to do with fatherly love. My mother Helen had passed away 8 months earlier, leaving Amanda a substantial inheritance, $500,000 in life insurance and investment accounts that would become accessible when she turned 21. I'd been carefully managing the estate through probate court, planning to surprise Amanda with the news on her birthday. But somehow Marcus knew about the money, and I realized his sudden interest in parental rights wasn't about love, it was about control. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as the pieces clicked into place. Amanda was watching me with those suspicious eyes, waiting for me to deny what Marcus had obviously told her. The morning light streaming through our windows now felt harsh and exposing, illuminating the gulf that had opened between us. Amanda, sweetheart, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your father is lying about almost everything, but I can prove it. I went to our home office and retrieved the box of documents I'd kept from Amanda's early years hospital records, birth certificates, custody agreements, and most importantly, the DNA test I'd insisted on during the original custody proceedings. Marcus had demanded paternity testing, not because he doubted Amanda was his, but because he'd wanted to establish parental rights before abandoning us. The birth certificate clearly listed both Marcus Torres and Linda Mitchell as Amanda's biological parents. The hospital record showed me in labor for 14 hours, with Marcus present for the delivery. The custody agreement from 2005 explicitly stated that Marcus was voluntarily relinquishing primary custody due to his inability to provide stable housing and income following his gambling addiction and job loss. "Your father didn't leave because I threatened him," I told Amanda, spreading the court documents across our kitchen table. "He left because he'd gambled away his savings, lost his job, and couldn't pay child support. The judge gave him a choice: get treatment for his gambling addiction and maintain supervised visitation, or sign over primary custody. He chose to sign his rights away." I showed Amanda the child support record, 17 years of minimal, inconsistent payments that totaled less than $15,000. "This is what he actually contributed to raising you," I said. "I worked double shifts at the hospital to make up the difference." For the first time since she'd walked into our kitchen that morning, I saw uncertainty flicker across Amanda's face. She was comparing Marcus's dramatic stories with the dry legal reality of court documents and financial records. "He's not trying to reconnect with you out of love, honey," I said gently. "He's learned about your grandmother's inheritance, and he wants legal control over your finances. If he gets custody, he becomes the trustee of your inheritance until you're 25. That's when Amanda looked up from the documents with tears in her eyes and whispered, "But Mom, he showed me DNA results that prove you're not my biological mother." The DNA results Amanda showed me were so professionally forged, I almost believed them myself until I noticed the one detail Marcus had overlooked. Amanda pulled out a manila envelope containing what appeared to be official DNA test results from Carolina Genetics Laboratory. The documents were impressive official letterhead, scientific language, detailed genetic markers, and they clearly stated that Linda Mitchell and Amanda Torres shared 0% genetic material and were definitively not biologically related. My nursing training kicked in as I examined these documents under our kitchen light. After 20 years of reviewing medical reports and lab results, something about the formatting felt wrong. The paper quality was too bright, too new for documents supposedly processed months ago. But more telling was the signature. It was too perfect, too consistent, like it had been practiced rather than naturally written. "Amanda," I said, pulling out my phone, "what's the address listed for this genetics lab?" When she read it aloud, I immediately searched for the business online. Carolina Genetics Laboratory didn't exist. The address belonged to a UPS store in a strip mall outside Atlanta, the same city where Marcus now lived. The phone number was disconnected. The supposed medical director, Dr. Richard Hawkins, had no medical license in any state. I went back to my document box and found the original paternity test results from 2005, the real ones, processed by Charleston Regional Medical Center during the custody proceedings. The results clearly showed Marcus Torres as Amanda's biological father with 99.97% certainty. But more importantly, they included my DNA profile as Amanda's biological mother with matching results. As we compared the documents side by side, the scope of Marcus's deception became clear. He'd hired someone to create fake DNA results, complete with fabricated lab credentials and forged medical signatures. He'd invested significant money and planning into convincing Amanda that her entire life was a lie. "Honey, look at the dates," I said, pointing to both sets of documents. "The real DNA test was done when you were 2 years old, during our custody hearing. These fake results are dated 3 weeks ago, right after your grandmother's will went through probate court and the inheritance became public record." I showed Amanda the probate filings from my mother's estate. The $500,000 inheritance had been officially recorded in Charleston County records exactly 1 month ago. Marcus had contacted Amanda 3 weeks later. The fake DNA results were dated 2 weeks after that. Everything was connected to the money. I watched my daughter's face as she processed the timeline, the inheritance announcement, Marcus's sudden contact, the fabricated evidence, the custody filing. The cold suspicion in her eyes was slowly being replaced by hurt and betrayal as she realized how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. According to family law attorneys, inheritance-motivated custody disputes have increased by 400% in recent years, with ex-spouses often using children as access points to family wealth. "There's one more thing you need to know," I said, reaching for the final document that would expose the full scope of Marcus's plan. "He's not just after your inheritance. He's planning to use it to disappear again, and this time, he wants to take you with him." Silent moment, Amanda staring at the fake DNA results, the weight of Marcus's betrayal settling over her. Ladies, what I showed Amanda next proved that her father wasn't just a manipulative liar. He was a dangerous criminal who'd planned to destroy our family for money. I pulled out the last document from my mother's estate files, a private investigator's report I'd commissioned after Marcus first contacted Amanda. What it revealed made my hands shake as I passed it across the table. Marcus Torres wasn't just a successful contractor in Atlanta. He was a man drowning in gambling debts, facing bankruptcy, and desperately searching for ways to access quick cash. The PI had discovered that Marcus owed over $300,000 to various creditors and loan sharks. His construction business was a facade he'd been operating without proper licenses, and had multiple lawsuits pending for unfinished work and stolen deposits. Most disturbing of all, he'd already approached 2 other ex-girlfriends from his past, claiming they had children who deserved reconnection and inheritance money. "Amanda, you're not his first target," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of this revelation. "He's done this before. 3 years ago in Tennessee, he convinced a woman named Carol that he was the father of her adopted daughter. He gained access to the girl's college fund before disappearing again. The year before that, he contacted an ex-wife in Florida, claiming their son needed his guidance to access a deceased grandfather's estate." Long pause as Amanda processes the scope of Marcus's criminal pattern. Amanda's face had gone completely white. She was staring at the investigator's photos of Marcus meeting with other women, documents showing his pattern of inheritance fraud, police reports from victims who'd lost their children's college funds to his schemes. But the most devastating discovery was in the final pages of the report. Marcus had already purchased one-way tickets to Mexico for both himself and Amanda, dated for next week right after he expected to gain custody and access to her inheritance as her legal guardian. He wasn't planning to build a relationship with his daughter. He was planning to steal her money and disappear forever, leaving her stranded and broke in a foreign country. Music rises, sound effects emphasize the emotional weight. "He was going to take you to Cancun," I whispered, showing her the flight itineraries. "The tickets are booked under assumed names. He has fake passports prepared. Once he transferred your inheritance money to offshore accounts, he was going to abandon you in Mexico with no way to get home." Amanda was crying now, real tears of betrayal and fear, replacing the cold anger she'd directed at me all morning. "Mom," she whispered, using that word for the first time since she'd walked into our kitchen, "he was going to kidnap me for real." We had 3 hours before Marcus's lawyer filed custody papers in family court. 3 hours to decide whether to let him continue his manipulation or fight back with everything we had. Amanda looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Mom, what do we do?" Amanda collapsed into my arms right there at our kitchen table, sobbing with the kind of raw, devastating tears that come when you realize someone you trusted was planning to destroy your life. I held my daughter, my real, biological, beloved daughter, while she cried out months of confusion, manipulation, and fear that Marcus had deliberately planted in her heart. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she kept whispering through her tears. "I'm so sorry I believed him. I'm so sorry I said those horrible things to you. But I wasn't angry with Amanda. I was heartbroken for her. At 19, she'd been targeted by a predator who happened to be her biological father, systematically groomed and manipulated by someone who should have protected her instead of exploiting her. Our kitchen, which had felt so cold and hostile just hours earlier, slowly warmed back into the heart of our home. I made Amanda's favorite chamomile tea while she called her college counselor to explain why she'd been so distressed lately. The Charleston afternoon sun was streaming through our windows again, but now it felt healing instead of harsh. As we talked through Marcus's manipulation tactics, I watched my intelligent, strong daughter reclaim her sense of reality. She began remembering all the times his stories hadn't quite added up, all the moments when his concern had felt performative rather than genuine. She started questioning why he'd been so insistent that she not tell me about their conversations, why he'd pushed so hard for her to distrust her own memories of our life together. "Honey," I said, holding her hands across our kitchen table, "what happened to you wasn't your fault. Marcus is a professional manipulator who targets vulnerable young people. He studied your social media, learned about your college stress and financial worries, and crafted his approach specifically to exploit your fears and dreams." I realized that almost losing Amanda had changed something fundamental in me too. For 19 years, I'd been so focused on being the perfect single mother that I'd sometimes forgotten to let Amanda see my own struggles and humanity. I'd tried to shield her from every hardship, which had made Marcus's promises of easy money and instant solutions seem more appealing than my honest limitations. "From now on," I told her, "we face everything together. No more me protecting you from difficult truths about our finances or my worries about your future. We're partners in this family, not protector and protected." We spent the next hour calling my lawyer, the Charleston Police Department, and the FBI Fraud Division. By evening, we had filed criminal charges against Marcus for inheritance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The fake DNA lab documents, the fraudulent legal papers, and the Mexico flight itineraries were all evidence of federal crimes. Sometimes the strongest thing a mother can do isn't fighting for her child, it's teaching her child to fight for herself. Amanda needed to see how predators operate so she could protect herself from future manipulation. 6 months later, I'm sitting in that same Charleston kitchen, watching Amanda study for her nursing school finals, while Marcus serves an 18-month sentence for fraud and attempted kidnapping. The inheritance money is safely in Amanda's name, managed by a reputable financial advisor until she graduates college. More importantly, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been. The FBI investigation revealed that Marcus had scammed at least 12 other families using similar inheritance fraud schemes: his fake genetics lab, his forged legal documents, and his network of accomplices were part of an elaborate criminal operation that had stolen over $2 million from single mothers and their children across 6 states. The family court judge who reviewed our case was so appalled by Marcus's systematic manipulation that she issued a permanent restraining order and terminated his parental rights completely. This court has never seen such deliberate, calculated abuse of the parent-child relationship for financial gain, she stated. Amanda will never have to worry about Marcus interfering in her life again. Amanda changed her major from nursing to criminal justice, inspired by the FBI agents who helped us build the case against Marcus. She wants to specialize in financial crimes against families. "I want to stop people like him from hurting other daughters and their moms," she told me. We've used part of her inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers returning to college, something my own mother would have loved. We named it the Helen Mitchell Fund for Educational Independence. I've learned to trust Amanda with difficult truths about our finances, my dating life, and my own fears about aging alone. She's learned to trust me with her real feelings, her college pressures, and her worries about the future. We're no longer just mother and daughter. We're genuine friends who happen to share DNA and 19 years of beautiful memories. Marcus's attempt to destroy our family actually made it stronger. When you survive someone trying to tear apart everything you love, you appreciate what you have in a whole new way. Amanda and I talk every day, even when she's busy with school. We've planned a graduation trip to Europe using part of her inheritance, the kind of experience Marcus would have stolen from her forever. But ladies, this isn't the only family secret that's come to light recently. 3 months after Marcus was sentenced, I received a phone call from a woman in Virginia claiming to be my sister. She said, "Linda, I've been searching for you for 30 years. Our mother didn't die in a car accident like you were told. She's alive, and she wants to meet you before it's too late." Have you ever had someone try to manipulate your child against you? Have you discovered that your family history isn't what you thought it was? Share your story in the comments because recognizing these warning signs might save another family from destruction. If this story showed you how strong the mother-daughter bond really is, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, the truth about my own mother will shock you even more.